Welcome to Canada's podcast. Hi, I'm Phil Bliss, founder and CEO of Canada's podcast, coming to you today from Toronto. Moufeed Kaddoura is CEO and founder of Combinator Health. Combinator Health is an innovative technology company that is reinventing the way we test for allergies. As CEO and founder, he has raised $16 million US and assembled a world-class management team with expertise across the board. In Moufeed's words, you build a health company to bring science and innovation to the clinic. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. And that's what I do. So, Moufeed, welcome to Canada's podcast. So good to see you. I should let people know that we do know each other, so you're not a total stranger to me. But you know, we haven't really talked about entrepreneurship. So why don't you, before we get into a conversation, discussion, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, you know, what you do, how you got here, just, 3 or 4 minutes of who you are, basically.
Absolutely, Phil. It's great to see you, and thank you for having me. And you're right, we do know each other. It's always great to talk to you. You're full of energy, and it's always fun. So I'm Moufeed. I'm an entrepreneur. I am a biologist by training. And to tell you a little bit about my story, I studied biology and I wanted to become a doctor like my dad. That was what I was fixated on all my life. And as I was pursuing that, I became a lot more interested in other things. Still in healthcare, but more so related to problems in healthcare. And the one thing I started looking at is, if I became a doctor, then there are ways that I can provide impact and benefit to the world, but it's limited to how many patients I can see every day. And I could go into research, but to be a doctor and help patients, you got to see patients. And I started thinking about ways that I could have a lot of, a big impact on society, and started looking at problems in healthcare and realized that the allergy space, which is what I'm doing right now, is really in desperate need for a lot of innovation and new technologies. And as I started talking to more patients who suffer from allergies, as well as allergy specialists, I realized that there's a real opportunity there. And I personally have allergies. Luckily, nothing life-threatening, but I've seen the process and I understand what it's like to have allergies. So I started my company a number of years ago, and essentially what we're doing is we're providing doctors with a way to diagnose patients for their allergies in the office using a small sample of blood. And we've been doing it for a number of years. It's been an exciting journey, and happy to share more about that.
Good. So before we sort of get much further, I would like to, we were talking about this before we came on air. Are entrepreneurs wired differently than others?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a certain level of being a rebel and being a renegade and not fitting into the mold that society puts you in. And I remember, so a lot of my friends who are also entrepreneurs, they're quirky, they're a little bit weird, they're deeply obsessed about what they're doing, and that's almost a requirement. If you're looking for a more quote unquote balanced lifestyle, and you want to have a lot of hobbies, and you want your job to be 9 to 5 and do a lot of other things, entrepreneurship is really not for you. One of the key ingredients to being an entrepreneur is obsession. You need to find something that you obsess about, and that's all you can think about. And that's the only way you can do it, because believe me, it's, you can look at the magazines and you can look at the news and you can see certain entrepreneurs being featured. But the reality of it is it's mostly a grind, and it's mostly just hard work, and it's mostly not fun, but you have to love what you're doing so that you continue to do it.
Stay ahead of the game with our expert tips and strategies that will help your business thrive in a digital era. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Yeah, but you talked about becoming a doctor. In a sense, doctors are entrepreneurs. They're independent. Yeah. They're responsible for their own business. Why not that versus what you're doing?
That's a great question. I think for me, one of the one of the big factors that helped me not go into medicine, but rather go into entrepreneurship, and specifically entrepreneurship in the medical field,
Mhm.
is a few of my internships that I've done. I did one or two internships in an academic laboratory. I was doing plant research, and I loved it. And it was a lot of fun, and we did some great work. But the research, as is some of the academic research, sometimes it's for the sake of understanding the world better and producing good science, but it doesn't have a commercial end in mind. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that wasn't really motivating for me. And on the other hand, I had a different internship in a lab where I was working on at the time it was a company that was developing a parathyroid hormone drug for patients, and there was a lot of research happening, but the end goal was this is going to treat patients who are sick, who have thyroid issues. And that, I could see the end, and that was really exciting to me. So in academia, sometimes there's a entrepreneurship or building a company or making money is seen as a dirty word because you want to advance the science for the pure sake of advancing science. But to me, where that falls apart is that is great science, and unless people are benefiting from it and it's eventually making it to the clinic and to the doctor and helping lives, then it's, I don't want to say it's a wasted opportunity, but I couldn't get motivated by that. So, for me, I guess that was a very indirect way of answering why I didn't go into medicine and I decided to work on problems in healthcare. It's because I realized that if there's so much research that's happening, but unless it makes it, unless you use the company building as a vehicle to bring that innovation to the clinic, it's never going to happen. And that was wildly fascinating for me. So I became obsessed, and then I started working on that.
So I'm sure people are listening to this or viewing, and they're saying, "What the hell does he do?"
Yeah.
So I think we should just talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business today, kind of thing.
Absolutely. So my company, I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Kaddoura Health. What we're doing is we're building a device, or we've built a device that brings blood-based allergy testing to the allergist office. And the way to think about this, Phil, is if you've ever had an allergy test, you know that there are a couple of different ways you can get tested. One of them is you can go to the doctor, and the common method that they use to test you for allergies is called a skin test. They put allergens on your skin, they poke you, and they look at how your skin is reacting to it. And that's a method that's used in the office, and it's really convenient and it's quick. But what we realize is that allergy specialists also have a second option, which is they can send you to the lab to get a blood draw. And the blood draw and the blood test specifically provides different information, different than the skin test, and quite valuable information that helps doctors better understand your allergy and the severity and how to treat you. And it helps them make a fuller plan. But the big problem here is that, and what we heard over and over again, is that when the blood test is inconvenient and a lot of patients are not getting it. And as a result, it's not helping anybody. So the idea was, let's bring blood testing into the doctor's office where they can run it along with other testing if they needed to, get a fuller understanding of what the patient is suffering from, and make a more comprehensive management plan, treatment plan, and suggest really actionable things all within the same visit. So that's the company I've been working on for some years. It's been a great journey. It's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging. We've built the technology and we've submitted it to the FDA last year. So now we're working with the FDA on that, and we've raised just about $20 million to date to get to this point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely that's a little bit about what I do, and that's what I call my more than full-time job. It's my 9 to 9 or 9 to 10 job.
So what's been the greatest challenge you faced in your business today?
Yeah, there's that's a good question, Phil. And the answer is, where do I start? It's yeah, it's that. Well, there are a couple of challenges. One of them is the fact that medical devices in the medical industry, it's inherently more difficult than other industries. You've got people's lives at stake. You can't just build an MVP and launch it as soon as you can. You can't have the market test your product, give you feedback, and iterate and generate revenue along the way. You can't do any of these things. Your product has to be perfect when you launch it, and that means it requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of money. It requires a lot of very specialized skill sets. It requires dealing with the regulators, whether it's Health Canada in Canada or whether it's the FDA in the United States. And it takes years to do it properly. You really can't iterate by launching a product and seeing how the market reacts to it. You're also providing medical information. So you have to make sure that the device, in terms of accuracy, or your technology in general, the technology has to work well. It has to be accurate, and the efficacy has to be quite high. The safety in certain devices or certain applications also have to be there. And you have to do a lot of studies to prove that. So there's that. And I think what makes that especially challenging is not only the time it takes, or the skill sets it takes, or how many very specialized people you have to have around you to help you with that, but also the fact that as a company, you're not a revenue generating company. You are a company that relies on investor capital to conduct the work, to conduct the research. And there are few investors, and very specialized investors, who would want to get behind that, because any investor, the first question they ask you is, how much money are you making today? What's your revenue like? And what are your projections for next year? And in a medical company, you don't have that, because you can't sell the product before it's fully approved. So yeah, these are some of the challenges that I've had to go through, amongst others. And there are, one of the interesting things as well is, and it took me years to realize this actually, is that as someone starting out in the medical space, and I always say this publicly, I wasn't born a medical devices expert. I learn by doing things, and I'm going to become an expert one day. And until then, I'm going to keep learning. But the one thing that took me a while to realize is that because it's such a difficult space, and because it's such a highly specialized area, you need to surround yourself with people who are way more experienced than you and way smarter than you in their respective fields, whether it's product development, or whether it's regulatory affairs, or whether it's engineering or software or hardware or mechanical. So building the team has really been what it's all about. And in my opinion, the only way to make something as complicated as what we're doing worthwhile and successful. And so there's been a lot of difficult things along the way, but I like hard things.
Join our thriving community of like-minded individuals who share a passion for success and innovation. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
It's not Kaddoura or anything. What do you see as your biggest challenge in your future as an entrepreneur?
My biggest challenge? Yeah, wow. That's a good question, Phil. You're gonna make me think about it. One thing I think about a lot, and I've been thinking a lot about it, is it's keeping the intensity. The same intensity that I've always had. I'm naturally a very intense person. I like to get things done. I don't like mediocrity. It bothers me greatly. And the one thing that I personally try to be very mindful of and very conscious of is not to lose that intensity, not to lose that spark. It's easy to do that. Life changes. You have responsibilities. You've got a mortgage. You've got a bigger family, and all of those things. I've seen them. I've seen them change people in my life quite a lot. So I think for me, it's just to keep the grind and to stay focused and to make sure that intensity never dies, because it's the only way to really make something valuable happen. It's like, being in the army or being an athlete. You really have to be a top performer, and that intensity is needed. You can't do it casually and expect successful results. There are businesses that you can do them more casually, but in the space that I'm in, it does require quite a lot.
So if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your 22-year-old self?
Yeah. I'm going to bring it back to something I mentioned. It's to surround myself sooner with people who are experts in the field, who have done various parts of what needs to happen, and do it sooner. And I'll give you a real story. So I was working on the company for some time, and I get to a point where things became frustrating a little bit because certain things weren't moving as fast. Technology wasn't moving as fast. Certain other areas weren't moving as fast. And I met a mentor who started his company in my space, sold it for $425 million. And, I came to him and I asked him a whole bunch of questions. I had a big list of things that I wanted to talk to him about. And it was a very productive call that I asked him for a second call and a third call and a fourth call and a fifth call. And he's still my mentor. I still talk to him every 2 weeks. But the one thing that became really clear and his most actionable advice is, Moufeed, you need, like, you're building this company, but you need a very experienced person on the product development side. So that's your number one thing that you need to do. And you need a very experienced leader on the regulatory side, because that's a big field, and you can, I can learn it. It's going to take me a while, and the best thing to do is to find that gem, that person who's going to make the whole organization much better. So if I went back to my 22-year-old self, which is actually around the time I started my company, I would say do that sooner. Like, do that as soon as you get started.
Mm-hmm. So you've got a mentor who said, but what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received that you use, that you kind of keep in your back pocket because it's something that you've used, it's like it's always relevant?
Yeah. Wow, Phil, you're really making me think.
That's what it's about.
This is not one of those podcasts where I can just give you a whole bunch of canned answers, right?
Yeah.
That's a good one. One of them is, this is going to sound really simple and sort of cliche, but it's one time we had a little bit of success, and it was the first check that I ever got for the company, the first literally $2,000. and I was young, and I was jumping up and down, and I was very excited, and I said, $2,000, we're gonna conquer the world, we're gonna make this happen. And someone came and put their hands on my shoulder and said, congratulations, go get more money, and this money is barely going to pay for your incorporation costs. But his advice was, and it's only going to get harder. So, and I think a lot of times people think that things will get easier, but in reality they get harder. You just become more adaptive, and you learn how to deal with increasing responsibilities. But in a way, it's challenging and it's fun, because you don't want things to get boring and easy and plateau. But the other, actually, like now that I think about it, one of the things that I always keep in mind is something I read in a book called Good to Great by, I'm blanking out on the name of the author, but it talks about something called the Stockdale paradox, where it was this U.S. General. He was in the army. He got captured in Vietnam and got tortured for years and years and years and years. And he made it. Eventually, he made it out of being a hostage, and he went on to do a lot of great things, teach and write books, and have a very, very prosperous career. Mm-hmm. And someone asked him about why it was him who survived versus his colleagues and his peers who did not make it. And shockingly, his what he said was, the people who died were the optimists. And to me, this was really shocking, because I'm an optimist. I'm always of the belief that things are going to get better. The world is a much happier place tomorrow. But he said the optimists were the people who died. And they said, whoa, can you explain that a little further? And what he said is that the optimists always believe that things are going to get better by Easter or Thanksgiving or Christmas. And then those would come and those would go. And year after year after year, eventually they died of a broken heart. So he said that what helped him get through all of this is having the unwavering belief that things will get better and the world will improve, and his situation or anyone's situation will get better over time, as long as you're doing the work that's required, and as long as you don't put a deadline on when things will get better. So, because he said that belief, you cannot afford to lose it. You cannot afford to lose the belief that the world will be better or the situation will be better or things will improve and whatever hardship is going to pass. So that's what I think about all the time is with anything in life, whether it's entrepreneurship or personal life, things will get better. You have to do the hard work. Don't set a deadline on it because you'll die of a broken heart, and just keep working.
With over 700 episodes and 500 news articles, we are your go-to source for all things entrepreneurship. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
So we're going to have some fun now. Just move on to some rapid fire questions. So just blurt out your answer. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
I would probably be a doctor.
Okay. You've talked about a book. What book are you currently reading? Listening to, you don't have to read it, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's been a while, but one book that I read before and I read again recently because I really like it is a book called The Hard Things About Hard Things. It's by Mark Andreessen, I believe, and yeah, it's an excellent book. I mean, he shares a lot of stories and he talks about a lot of scenarios that he went through, and his underlying message is there's always a way. There's always a way.
Are you a morning or a night person? I think I know, but
yeah, I'm actually more of a morning person, and I have something clicks in my mind when I hit midnight, my brain shuts off. Can't do anything anymore.
If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why would you choose it?
I would say ambitious.
Okay.
And the reason I would choose it is I feel like we're given so many opportunities every day, and it's a shame if we don't utilize them to the fullest. So the one I heard a saying one time, I don't fully agree with it. I don't agree with it 100%, but I think there's a lot of truth in it. It's the harder you work, the luckier you get. And the way I've seen that translate over the years is if I just work hard and I put myself out there, good things happen. I meet random people that turn out to be great mentors, great advisors, great investors. And keeping that ambition alive is really how I would describe myself.
Interesting. What's keeping you up at night?
What's keeping me up at night? Wow. There's, for us, like as a company, we've got a lot of great milestones ahead of us, and we've got FDA that we're working with, and we've got other plans for the future and how we're eventually going to place the devices in the clinic. Because ultimately, if we don't do that, then we haven't succeeded as a company. Our device has to be in the clinic. So I think about that a lot. And another thing, I wouldn't say it's keeping me up at night, but another thing that I've been thinking about a lot is making sure that I instill some more exercise in my life. Just taking care of the physical aspect of my life, so that I can continue to run at the same speed for many years.
Moufeed, we've come to the end of our time, and it's been really fun. I've enjoyed some very interesting responses to the questions. So I'd like to thank you very much for coming on to Canada's podcast.
Bill, thank you so much. It's always good to see you, and this was a great opportunity, and I enjoyed talking to you. By the way, the questions you asked were excellent. You made me think a few times.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thanks, Moufeed.
Thank you very much.